Oh, good morning. Welcome back. Bit of a rainy day today. I think it's the first rainy morning since I started doing this podcast, so I've had some good rain this month, but not in the morning, which is interesting. But I guess storms are more active in the afternoon usually. Oh. You know, I always liked a bit of weather science. I've not been as into it as my wife because she likes meteorology a lot more. But I always find kind of the science behind weather very interesting. There's a lot to it, just the way it works is very interesting. That's not really words. I'm a little more tired this morning. I'm having a hard time getting started, I guess. Oh, well. So I don't know about anybody else, but growing up, my mom used to make homemade ice cream every now and then. And I am a big fan of homemade ice cream. It's really good. And so about a year ago, my church had an ice cream social where we were doing homemade ice cream, and I thought I should learn how to do it. And so I borrowed my parents' ice cream maker and picked a recipe and started making it. But I didn't realize I picked a recipe that took like 8 hours for the ice cream to be done. And it was a few hours just prepping it. So my first time, it was very good ice cream, but it took forever. But I found a different recipe since then, so I've made it a few more times, but the reason I'm talking about it is I'm planning on making some this weekend for Independence Day. We're celebrating with my wife's family. I'm not really that big on just like super patriotic, go America and all that. You know, I do really appreciate that I live in this country, and I do think it's a great place to live. And I really appreciate all the people who serve in the military and all that. Have a ton of respect for anyone who's put their life in danger for their country or for other people. But I'm just not a big patriot kind of guy, I guess, because I just feel like you see that interfere too much with people making good choices, because they get so absorbed in America first that they kind of ignore the rest of the world and start kind of treating the rest of the world like it's less important. And I think it's important to remember that those of us living in America, it's important for us to remember that we do not represent the world. And America, although it is one of the higher population countries when you list them all, really it's nowhere close to the ones that are larger. Like, we've got more people than any European country, but you start looking at countries in Asia, and it just is way more than America is ever going to have, probably. So it's difficult to kind of justify putting America first, in my opinion, because there's so many other people out there who have so many more issues and there's so much more going on. So I have a lot of respect for the people who serve in the armed forces, but for the people who are in charge of the country and who actually make the decisions on where and when we're going to fight, I don't have respect for, because a lot of the most recent wars that America's been in have just been long, drawn-out conflicts over next to nothing, more because of ideological differences than any actual danger. And it's just caused so much harm to so many people for something that it's hard to tell if it was justified really or not. But another problem with all that is the defense budget of the United States is the majority of the annual U.S. budget, and we're increasingly in debt, just massively in debt. Like, it is completely ridiculous the amount of debt the USA has, and it's not even close to being resolved. And most of that is going to buying weapons and equipment that we don't even need, just because of politics. That's what we're still doing. But I really think that so many people, when they try and save money, just start firing people. And the recent kind of attempts to save the government money by, like, Trump and Elon Musk, most of what they did was get rid of jobs, which that's not where the budget's going. The government is paying for things that they don't use in their military all the time. You can still pay just as many people to be in the military, have enough weapons and equipment for all of them, and still decrease the military spending budget by like 50%. The budget's not going towards people. It's going towards businesses that do nothing but make military arms. But that's something that's been plaguing the U.S. since World War II, is that jobs manufacturing military goods pulled us out of the Great Depression, and nobody wants to see if cutting them will put us back in one. But I really think something has to change, or else the debt spiral is just going to get worse. But you know, all the programs that actually do help people are always getting their funding cut. And a lot of people say military research is important because it drives innovation, but that stuff stays proprietary for years. And what they need to do is give all the military research funding to NASA so that actual innovation that helps people happens. Because when NASA's budget was bigger back 50, 60 years ago, NASA was constantly inventing new technology that people started using every day within years of it being invented. And that's why we have cell phones, microwaves, any computer smaller than the palm of your hand. It's a lot, but oh, sorry, that was a very, very slow morning for me, but I'm just feeling kind of tired and groggy. Anyway, that's all the time we got for now, so. Alright, I'm back. Oh boy, was that a busy morning. Oh. Well, I know I wasn't talking about anything in particular this morning, and it was a very slow podcast so far. Sorry about that, but I've just been I was a little tired this morning and a little preoccupied, you know. But I do not really have any topics to talk about, so I'm just gonna blabber on for a bit because I really have no idea what I'm doing right now, you know. It's kind of hard to do this a lot, especially when I'm busy with something else. I guess I could talk about what I'm having to deal with at work right now, which is we got internet, but pretty much we thought that we were going to have a network switch provided to us for our internet at the new office we're moving to. But instead, the building, when they installed all the new cabling, they just did not include the network switch, so we are going to have to do it ourselves, meaning I am going to need to do it myself and and install a network switch onto our server rack, and then proceed to plug everything in, which should be manageable. But I don't have a ton of IT experience. I have enough to do this, but I know it's going to be a little more difficult. Kind of trying to make sure everything's set up correctly and test everything, run everything. I just want to make sure I do it right. But I need to take a look and see what all we need to do, because I want to make sure I get this done right. I know there's something you can get where you plug in something on an Ethernet port and it sends a signal through that line so that I can match which line is what, but I really need to kind of sit down and figure all of this out. But it's also the first of the month, and I am not technically an IT manager. I am an accountant, and so I still have to do all of our first of the month accounting, which is our busiest time of the month. So this is going to be a very busy week, and then there's a holiday on Friday, so it's a short week, which means we are going to cram even more into the space of a small week. Plus, there were some other issues that came up that we're trying to get resolved, and it's just a bit of a stressful day. You know, sometimes it's hard to just figure out exactly what to talk about, because I don't want to just complain, or I really don't like talking about work that much. I feel like complaining about work doesn't really make me feel better. It just kind of gets it out there, because the stress isn't from worrying about work, it's just from the actual workload more for me. I feel like I do a pretty good job of not stressing about things outside of work, but recently I think I've just been having a harder time with kind of the workload. You know, I think there's just a lot of things I have a hard time talking about, or I feel awkward talking about, that I really don't need to. But I just have a harder time being a communicative person in general, and having that openness to communicate all the time. So, not always sure what exactly I need to do, and sometimes I just think maybe I need to just open up more and make sure I'm talking about everything. And you know, recently I've been thinking about just the way I approach my faith too, and talk about it, because I know I've talked about my faith on this podcast before, but I don't feel like I've done it enough, you know. I feel like I've always kind of been open to talking about it, but I've never presented my faith first. I always kind of wait for the topic to come up naturally. And I don't know, I don't want people to feel like I'm trying to pressure them to talk about religion, because I know that it makes a lot of people uncomfortable, and I don't want to make people uncomfortable, but at the same time, you know, it is an important part of my life, and it should be the most important part of my life. And I think I'm starting to realize that I need to just be more confident in my ability to speak about things without the need for somebody else to start that conversation. I have a hard time kind of being the one to start conversation a lot of times. Not because I think there's anything wrong or because I'm even shy. It's just something I'm not used to doing. I'm not used to being the one to initiate that conversation, and so I've kind of struggled with that in my personal life, just around different things. And just, I guess that's something I need to work on, and something I want to do better on. And I guess just there's that societal pressure to not address your faith and your religion openly because it might not be what everybody wants to talk about, and people just act like that's something that should be private when it really shouldn't be. You know, if you really have a strong faith, that's going to be important to your life, and it's not going to be something you can just ignore, not going to be something you can just set aside and put off for later. So it's important that I kind of do talk about that, and I want to start that here, and it's new to me. I'm not a preacher, and I never have been. I feel like I can do pretty good at talking, but I really struggle to get to a good point and find those good kind of things to talk about. I want to be able to do that more and to really give a good account of myself, be able to share the faith I have with others and kind of provide my own experiences for it, but I still struggle with feeling that societal pressure to not discuss it publicly. But that, I think, is what I want to really focus on, not letting interfere with my own day-to-day, and I want to be able to use this podcast to talk about my faith. So I think I need to just start doing that. But right now I am getting home, so you'll have to wait till after I eat lunch for that conversation. Oh, thinking about why it's so hard to kind of talk about and address your faith. I think it's just a lot of pressure from society, but also I think just it's hard to do in a way that doesn't kind of make people think you're just a Jesus freak. But I use that term because there's a song called Jesus Freak, and I was thinking about that earlier. And kind of not all the lyrics, but the main point of the song is that you don't need to care if people judge you for being a Christian, because all that matters is God. And I really think that that's a very hard lesson. It's something teenagers especially struggle with, and I think I've been struggling with it ever since then, because I always really enjoyed a lot of parts of church and all, but I just felt like I couldn't really talk about it because people didn't want to hear about that, and I wouldn't fit in and I wouldn't be accepted. But I think now that I'm past my teenage years and all, I'm realizing more and more that that's just dumb, and you don't need to try to fit in. I look at my dad, and he just sings songs from the songbook and talks about God all the time, and he's not ashamed of it. And I think that that's something that I've struggled with more than I wanted to admit, is being ashamed of my faith. Not because I thought it was wrong, but just because I thought other people wouldn't accept me for being a Christian. And I think it's time that I ignore that and just let myself kind of embrace it and try to really live my life that way. I want my daughter to grow up with a dad who's not afraid to sing, who's not afraid to pray, who's not afraid to cry, who's not afraid to show his emotions and his love and his faith. And I really just want to make that more of a priority in my life. You know, there's a show that was on TV a while ago called Duck Dynasty. And if you haven't heard of it, it's these guys that were that are just like outdoorsmen. They're hunters and kind of woodsmen, but they make duck calls, and they have a whole company around that, and their whole family's involved in it. But the most important thing to all of them was their faith, that they're Christians. And they started a bunch of podcasts from different members of the family, but the kind of patriarch of the family, Phil, and his sons, Jason and Al, started a podcast a few years ago after the show got canceled that was called Unashamed, that they were unashamed of their faith and using their podcast as a platform to read through scripture and talk about their faith and experiences. And I don't know exactly how long ago it was. I think it was about a month and a half ago now. Phil died. He was old, and something had happened that put him in poor health. But all of them were joyful that he left such an impression on them. And he really just changed so many lives. And it was because he wasn't ashamed. And it was because he really just put himself out there and just spoke the truth and would tell everybody he met about his faith. And I saw that on the news that he had died, and so I pulled up their podcast because I hadn't listened to it in years. I got back on it and listened to them talk about their dad. The impact he had on their lives and so many people around them. And I thought that I want that to be me. I want to be that guy that my family looks up to, and that I can just find people all around me who see me and just see somebody who's not afraid to say that they follow God. So I think that kind of inspired me, just seeing his story and his life. Inspired me to just take a step back and look at my life, see where I was and how I've been acting. And I haven't been like doing anything wrong. It's just I haven't been really pushing to let God be the center point of my life. I've let it be work or family or just my hobbies. I haven't let God take over. And I don't really think I ever did. And I think that's why it's been so hard. Is that I never just let God take control and let Him guide me. I always wanted to be in charge. I didn't want to do anything that made me uncomfortable or that took me out of the easy path I'd found. I wanted to get my degree, get married, have a kid, get a job. I wanted to do all these other things first. I thought if I could just get my life in order, if I could just kind of get myself to where I felt like I was doing good, then I'll get around to it. Then I'll be active in the church. Then I'll do all this. But I think it's impossible to do that. You're never going to have your life in order. I knew that when it came to having kids, because my wife and I had talked about it, and we both wanted kids, but we never just felt like we were ready. It felt like we were too busy, or we didn't have enough money, or we weren't at a good enough place. We were in an upstairs apartment, so we couldn't get a stroller up easy. Didn't want this to happen. We're struggling with that. It was never good enough to be ready to have kids. We were just never quite there. And then we just decided that we weren't gonna be ready. And we just needed to have kids when we wanted them, not when we felt everything was perfect. Because if you wait until your life's perfect, you'll be waiting forever. This world is not perfect, and never is gonna be. It's something that is just a constant everyday struggle to figure out all the different problems. But I think I'm ready now to say that where I am is good enough, because God doesn't want me to be perfect. He knows I can't be. He wants me to come to Him so He can make me perfect. I don't know how to do that best, though. I'm gonna have to pray about it and read and try and figure it out, because I think that's something that I do need to work on, is knowing how to live out for God. That's all the time I have for now. Oh, I'll continue this later. Oh, well, I'm back. Oh, man, has it been a chaotic day, but time to go home now. And there's nothing like going home after a long day and walking in and having your daughter yell daddy and run up and grab your leg, give you a big old hug. There's just nothing like it in the world. It's really just something else, the way that kids are. My daughter has started kind of talking more, and so I've been trying to kind of have a conversation with her to show her how it works, and I'll get home and she'll be like, "Daddy," and I'll pick her up and I'll say, "How was your day?" And she got to where she'll say, "Good," and then I'll ask, "What'd you do?" And then she just points, and at lunch she just pointed and said, "Bubbles." And I don't know whether that meant she wanted her bubbles, she played with her bubbles earlier, or her day was bubbles. Because honestly, with her, it could be any of them. And it was just so much fun, just seeing her growing, and yeah, she just has so many things. Of course, that does come with a lot of fit throwing. She's gotten to that stage where she has to throw a fit a day at least, and I think we manage it pretty well. It's hard though, especially when you're used to a little baby who's just all calm all day and only cries when she needs something, but now she's crying because she's frustrated or tired or mad, and it's a bit different, but it's definitely interesting being a parent. A lot of things just kind of change, not the way you do things as much as people think. Like, your day-to-day doesn't really change all that much, but your kind of attitude and view on everything is what changes. And it's weird just how much it does change, because just everything kind of gets put into different perspective, and it's like you were looking at the road from inside the car, and then next thing you know, you're looking at it from a helicopter, and everything looks different even though nothing's changed. But I definitely think that it's nothing to be worried about. If I know my sisters do tend to worry about becoming parents. My older sisters do. I think they're more worried about, going through pregnancy and birth, which is definitely a lot. But I know they see a bunch of stuff on TikTok about things going horribly wrong, and that's most of the time nothing like that happens. And if you have a good doctor and all, you're pretty likely to come through it with no long-term damage. I know, like, at the hospital we use for our last one, they actually have a very low C-section rate too, so most women who go there don't even have a C-section, which most women in the US give birth without a C-section, but there's some hospitals where that rate is very high and some where it's very low. But after, when we were kind of getting ready to have our daughter, we went through a lot of classes that they had available. there is a car crash or something up here, so I may have to pause and get off for a minute. Okay, I'm back. Just wanted to make sure I was paying attention while everything's kind of slowing down. You got to be careful when you're going by a car crash, because a lot of people just stop and look and don't pay attention to where they're going. But back to what I was talking about, just a lot of people these days seem to be very afraid of having kids. I guess it's not a lot of people, but I know that it is something that is becoming more common, and I've seen it in a lot of people I knew. When we were expecting our daughter, a lot of people our age were so surprised and were acting like there was no way they'd ever be ready to have kids, and that it was so scary, and like, oh, what happens to all your freedom, and what you can't go out on Friday nights anymore. And I was like, we didn't even do that in the first place, first of all. But really, it's just, your life doesn't change very much, and I'm way happier now as a dad than I ever was before. Like, the things that most people these days, like, there's so many guys that say like marriage and kids are scary, or they are worried that it'll make their life less fun, and I got happier and had more fun after I got married than I ever had before getting married. And I have definitely gotten out less since having a kid, but I definitely have had more fun just seeing her grow and getting to have fun with her. You'll never forget the first time you hear your child laugh, and just want to do it again and again, making them laugh. I remember for us, my daughter we laid her on the bed, and then I kind of bounced her on the bed a little bit, and then she giggled, and it was just the most beautiful noise I'd ever heard. I just kind of bounced her again, and she giggled and was smiling, and so I just did it again and again. And now that she's a little older, sometimes we'll be sitting there on the bed, reading her bedtime stories or getting ready for bed, and she'll just jump on me and say tickles, and then pretend like she's tickling me, because she doesn't really know how to tickle yet. But I'll tickle her back, and she'll just giggle and crack up laughing and be rolling, and it's just so great. It just also makes me think how they say you kind of turn into your parents, and I definitely think that's true, and I think that's a good thing in my case, because my parents are both great, and I can see myself turning into my dad, especially around my daughter, because I do a lot of the same things he did with us to make us laugh and to make sure we were enjoying ourselves. He was always watching over us and all, and I definitely feel that same protectiveness, and I definitely do the same things to make my daughter laugh that he did for me. That kind of comes back to what I was talking about earlier. I just want to be a good dad and I look to my dad a lot for inspiration on that, because he's a great man and he's always done good for me and the rest of my family. And he always puts a lot of effort into helping others and trying to make sure everyone around him has got everything they need and is taken care of. I really hope that my kids look up to me the same way I look up to him. I never understood him quite as well until after I had a kid, and then so many things throughout the years just came into sharp perspective, and I just saw it all through that new light, because you never understand your parents as a kid. You know, they're always worried about things that you don't even understand and you don't worry about, and they're always like telling you not to do things that could hurt you, and you're like, I'm not gonna get hurt, I'm not a little baby anymore. But after having a kid, you just realize everything that they did. You see the reason for all of it, and you feel that same protectiveness. You see those same emotions in yourself, and you understand your parents a lot more than you ever thought possible. And I definitely hope that I was good to them, and that they're good grandparents to my daughter like they were good parents to me. But that's all the time I have for today.